Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Lamed Dalet in Baba Kamas. We learn for Achenu Chol Beis Yisrael and Sunnah Matzar B'Shivya. Says the Gemara at the 2 dots, 6 lines down on the page. Now we've learned, we all know already by this point that a shor tam who has not yet been found guilty of damaging 3 times, he's not a mu'ed yet. He has to pay chatzi nezek for damages that he does in a seemingly unnormal way, in an abnormal fashion. Unusual, and it's taken out of the body of the mazik. The mazik here, we're talking about the animal, the mazik. The mazik could refer to the owner or to the animal itself. And now we're going to talk about some weird cases today that are slightly not so simple. Tanarbanan, Shorshav Masayim. Shinagach Shorshav Masayim. The mazik and the nizik's animals are both worth $200. And the mazik did damage to the nizik's animal to the tune of $50. So he did $50 worth of damage. How much should he have to pay? 25, right? Pays half. Okay. The Shabach, the Oman al says, wait a minute. The animal, the nizik's animal that was worth originally 200, and he did $50 worth less, so it's now worth 150. Now it went up, it's worth 400. The price went up of animals, and went worth more. So what do you say over here? Il Mole Eziko, had he not damaged it, might have been worth even more. In other words, the animal has been gored. You're talking about an injured, wounded animal, but despite that, it went up to worth double what it was worth originally. But had he not been damaged, Hayomi al Shmona may have been worth even more. Maybe it was worth 800.
Did the market in general go over?
Pardon?
Did just that one animal go up?
It makes no difference. Makes a difference. The animal now is worth more. So the market went up. The market went up. It doesn't. We don't care. We look at the market now. What is he worth now? So now he's worth 400.
The nezik done stayed the same.
Very good. So the nezik was done, stays the same, right? So that's what he says. So Ezekiel Hayomi al Shmona says, no, says he's got to pay at the time that he did the damage. He did $50 worth of damage. So he's got to pay 25, right? That's what he says. No sikashas and nezik. Okay. Kochash, let's say though, between the time that he did the damage to the time that they went to court to adjudicate it, Kochash, and it went down even more, Kashasa Morabedin. Then he has to pay like the time of the judgment. In other words, it went down, he did $50 worth of damage, right? By the time, so he should pay 25. By the time they went to court, it was worth less. It was only worth, in other words, it had gone down. Not that it went up, but it had gone down from, let's say it was worth 200 originally, then it was worth 150 after the damage. Now it's worth 140, $60 worth of damage. So he pays it. He has to pay like a Marabdin, meaning he'd have to pay the Masik would have to pay 30, right? He pays half. He'd have to pay 30. Okay. How does this all, right? What's not fair to whom?
It's not fair
to the mazik. Oh, why? Because he says when I damaged it was worth right. Okay, here. Let me give you a medical situation. Okay, let's say the man was hurt. Let's say he damaged a person, and the person had severe doctor's bills, $500 he had to pay. While he was in the hospital, his situation deteriorated. Now they're not going to say, well, that had nothing to do with the original injury. The injury started one way and continued to get worse. So you could say, as the Gemara is going to say, your animal's horn is still sticking in my animal. In other words, the damage was initially seemed to be $50, but he deteriorated. Okay, he didn't pay right away. By the time we talk about if he paid right away, and Hanami, but here by the time it was adjudicated, the initial reaction looks like there's $50 worth of damage. Then the animal's hurt, and it goes down to even more. So I guess it goes according to Shasa Marabedin. Okay, now that's all where the animal was damaged, right? We're talking about the nizik's animal was damaged. If it went up, why can't he say, listen, remember he said if it was worth originally 200, it went down to 150, now it went up to 400. He said, listen, it's worth more. Why should I pay you anything? The answer is because then they could say, had you not damaged it, it would have worth 800. You know, maybe the animal got worth more or the market went up. Whatever it was, it's worth more now. Why? Because it's worth more, period. But you can't say, well, it's worth more than how can you say, when I damaged the animal, it was worth 200, right? Now it's worth, the damage is worth 150. Now it's worth 400. I shouldn't pay you anything. no, you should pay me because had you not damaged my animal, it would have been worth 800. So he said, like Avram said, he pays the original $25. If it went down in value, then he pays even more. Shabach mazik, let's say the animal that did the damage got worth more. All right. So what do you say there? Shabach mazik, the mazik went up, no, it's like kashasa nezek. What does it sound like? This sounds like, remember, what did Rabbi Kiva say yesterday? That when the mazik does the damage, the tam, where does the nizik effectively owns the mazik's animal right away when he gets 50? Remember, Rabbi Shmuel says he owns them the money, but Rabbi Kiva says he owns the animal. So let's say the animal got worth more now. Shavach mazik, no, it's like kishasa nezik. No, he only pays according to the time that he did the damage. In other words, he can't take more. The nizik can't take more. We're going to explain this in a minute. Kachash, let's say it went down in value. Kishasa madabedin. Okay, if it went down in value, you pay according to the time that the damage that it was adjudicated. Now, how do we understand this? Amar Ma, let's analyze it. Shavach mazik noslan kishasa nezik. If the mazik's animal went up in value, he pays only according to the time of the nezek. What does that mean? Money Rabbi Shmuel, because he was Shmuel Damar Baal Chovu. The mazik owes the nizik money. The owner owes him money, but he doesn't own the animal right away. Remember we said, according to Rabbi Shmuel, he has a chov, he has to pay the money. But the mazik has to pay the nizik. But according to Rabbi Kiva, the nizik owns the animal. So the nizik owns the animal, and the animal went up in value. He's entitled to half of the animal. So, but it says, we don't say that. It says, if the mazik's animal went up in value, you pay only according to the value at the time of the damage. So money that goes to Shmuel, he just owes him that money. In other words, in our case, where he $200 animal damaged a $200 animal to the tune of $50, he owes him $25, right? He owes him $25 because that's half the damage. So he pays the $25. That's it. Aim a sefer, but the sefer says, the last case said, kochash, if the mazik's animal went down in value, kashasa bedin, he only gets what it's worth at the time of the judgment. If the time of the judgment it's worth less, he takes the money out of that. That means also it goes like Rabbi Kiva, that the nizik is now a shutef. He owns part of the animal, of the mazik's animal. So Reish Rabbi Shmuel with Sefer Rabbi Kiva, these two things don't jive. In the Sefer, when we talk about the animal, the mazik's animal going up in value and going down in value, the first part, if it goes up in value, you say no, he pays only time of nezek. He doesn't own the nizik doesn't get half of the animal physically, that he's a partner in the animal. That goes like Rabbi Shmuel. But the Sefer says that if it went down in value, he still has to pay. He pays kishas samadadin. If it went in value, the animal went down. The mazik's animal went down in value. It's no longer worth the 200 that it was worth originally. It's now worth less. So how do you figure that? Rashi says, "Hey, in other words, when the animal, the $200 animal damaged the other $200 animal to the tune of $50, and we said, how much in case does the mazik have to pay? $25. That's 1/8 of the total value, right? The animal's worth 200, pays $25. He owes 1/8. Does he own 1/8 of the animal, or does he pay $25? He says, well, if you say the animal went up in value, he only pays the $25. That means that he just owes the $25. He doesn't own the animal. But then you said, if it went down, let's say the $200 animal went down and is only worth now, $100, let's say. So you say, no, he only gets 1/8 of that. So how does that work? That goes like Rabbi Kiva. So the first part goes like Rabbi Shmuel, the second part goes like Rabbi Kiva. Rashi says that kirchash mazik, in other words, he only owes him 1/8 of $100, not 1/8 of $200. So that goes like Rabbi Kiva. Gemara says, low. Kula Rabbi Kiva goes like Rabbi Kiva. The reason it's also like Rabbi Kiva, meaning that you own the nizik owns now at that point, he owns 1/8 of the animal. Why 1/8? Because the animal's worth 200, damaged the animal, another worth 200. He damaged him to the tune of $50. So he owes him $25, which means he owes him 1/8 of the mazik's $200 animal. 1/8. And that 1/8 stands all the time. So therefore, if it went down in value, he only gives him 1/8. If the animal that Shasam Adabadin is only worth 100, he gives him 1/8 of 100, not 1/8 of 200. But you said if it goes up in value, you said if it went up in value, he pays Kashas Hanezek $25. Why? He should get 1/8 of it. What if it went up to 200 to 300 or $400? You should get 1/8 of that. The answer is it's speaking here where the mazik fed the animal, fattened him up between the time of the damage. His own animal, the mazik's animal, fattened up between the time of the damage and the time they went to court. Shapitmo, each shapitmo. If you're talking about where it went up in value because he fed him, he bred him and made him worth more. So in the ratio we talk about the nizik's animal going up in value. Remember, when the damaged animal, the nizik, was originally 200, went down to 150, then it went up to 400. We say no, he only pays according to the time of nizik. If the nizik was down in value to 150, and then it went up to 400 because he fed him a lot of money, not necessarily because the market went up, just went up by itself, but simply because he fattened them up. He didn't let him work. He let the enemy just fatten them up and fatten them up. So of course, why should the mazik have any claim and say, well, your animal's worth more now, I shouldn't have to pay you more. I shouldn't have to pay you anything because, it was worth 200 before. Yes, I did damage originally to the tune of $50, but now it's worth 400. Well, what kind of a claim is that? That's worth 400 because he fed him more. He bred him more. The ratio in the first case where the nizik's animal went up in value, it doesn't make any difference if he fed him more or if it went up by itself. The argument there being that the nizik could say, you still have to pay me the original $50, half of the $50 because you did that damage. That it went up in value, don't come to me that it went up in value and you shouldn't have to pay anything. Had you not damaged it, it would have worth even more. Whether I fed it or not, you have no claim, even if it went up by itself. This tell me if it went up by itself, he's got to pay the original $25, and he can't say, well, it's worth more now, I shouldn't pay you anything. Seifa, the Seifa where the mazik's animal was more, why? Because we're going like Rabbi Kiva, that once he did the damage, the nizik is now a partner in the mazik's animal. So he was a partner to the tune of 1/8, right? The original $25 out of the $200 mazik's animal. And therefore, if it went down in value, the mazik's animal is worth 100 now, well, it's your investment. You own 1/8 of the animal, so you only get 1/8 of 100 instead of 1/8 of 200. So if it went up in value, we should also get more. That's speaking about where the mazik fattened him up, and therefore the nizik has no claim for the increase in value of the mazik's animal. So kochash kishasam bedin in the first case where the nizik went down in value. Again, the mazik was 200 damaged an animal, 200 went down. It's worth 150, right? And then we said it went up to 400. Yeah, well, that's speaking about if it went up to 400, he has no claim. The mazik cannot claim I shouldn't pay you anything because the animal's worth more now, because it would have worth even more had you not damaged it. But then if it went down in value, you pay according to the time of the adjudication if it went down. In other words, the mazik apparently gets an advantage. You said that doesn't seem fair. Why is it worth less? Because the nizik overworked it. So in other words, we said before that if the animal was worth originally the nizik was 200, went down to 150 after the damage, and now at the time they come to court, it's only worth 140. So you would say that the mazik has to pay now 30, half of 60, the 60 shekel, the $60 damage should pay more 30, not the original 25, half of 50, but now half of 60, right? Not the original, half of 50, but the half of 60. So if it went down in value because the nizik worked him, he felt that the animal was damaged and worked him to the bone. So why should the mazik have to pay more? The mazik could say, listen, when I damage your animal, I only did worth $50 worth of damage. Now it went down and now you worked the animal too hard, so it's worth less. Why should I pay for that depreciation? Amarashi, no, the kochas machas maka. It was bad, like I told you before, because of the original wound. I wounded the animal. We thought it was worth $50 wound. Turns out after he was in the sick bay for a few days, the wound got worse, right? Got worse. The Amrlay, because the nizik could say, kind of the horn of your ox, Kavir Bay, is still embedded in my animal. So there you say that it got worse. You have that many times. I think in medicine you have that too, or or an accident happened or something like that, and they come to assess the damage. But after a few days, the damage has spread, and you see that the original wound or the damage, whatever it was, has to be reassessed. And that's why over here, in this case, where the nizik originally it looked like the damage was 50, and now it turns out that the damage was 60, the mazik would have to pay half of 60, not half of 50. Now the pasuk talks about you split the animal. How does that work? What cases are we speaking about? So it depends on what the animals are worth. We're taking simple cases. Now we just brought down a little complicated case if he got worth more or less subsequent. The Mishnah tells us the basic case. As soon as the longer wait, it can get worse and worse, right? So, right. So you have to adjudicate it as soon as possible. What can you do? Those are the rules of you can't take the law into your own hands. We had before in certain cases you could take the law into your own hands, right? When there's going to be a loss, you could take the loss in your own hands. In other words, he could say, listen, if you're not willing to come to court, I'm going to grab the money and fight it out later on. You could do that too. It depends on the situation. You're right.
It's like gambling in the sense
Yeah.
that if you think that the prices of the insurance are going to go up over a period of time, you delay the adjudication.
Right. That could be too, but it depends, for what it was. Again, the argument can be made, even if it goes up, even if it went up in value, the nizik could say it would have gone up even more if you hadn't done the damage, right? So these are all valid arguments that have to be ruled in court. Shorshav masam. Again, a $200 shekel animal, whatever, damage another shorbat vela klum. It's not worth anything. That's very simple. 200 mazik damage to 200 nizik, and now the nizik is worth nothing, zero. The carcass isn't worth anything, so the damage is 200, pays 100. I'm Rav Meir. I'll say the pasuk is a machras ashorachai b'chatzos kaspa. Very simple, no problem. So what do? The 200 damage to 200. The 200 now the nizik is worth nothing, so you split it. You take the mazik's animal and you split it. Each guy gets 100. Why 100? Because the mazik did a damage to the tune of 200, right? And he has to pay half. We're talking about a tam. So what do? You take his 200 shekel, $200 animal, and you split that in two, and each guy gets it. Rabbi Akiva says he gets the animal itself, and Rabbi Shmuel says he owes him the 100. Very simple. I'll say that's simple. Amalei Rav Yehuda, that's true. But you fulfill the pasuk. It says you sell the mazik's animal. It's worth 200. You split the proceeds. Each guy gets 100. But the chatzos kaspa, you fulfill that pasuk. And what about the pasuk? It says, and you also split what the dead animal was worth. How do you fulfill that? I'll tell you how that works. The case we had up above here. 200 damage to 200. And now the nizik is worth 150, right? Because the damage was 50. How do you work it out now? The damage, how much was 50, right? Because it was 150. So the damage is not 50. The damage was 150. The case I said it wrong. Before the case was the case at the top that we started with today was 200 damage to 200, and he only did damage to the tune of 50, right? He was worth 150. Here, he's only worth 50. He's only worth 50, so the damage is 150. So how much does the mazik have to pay? 75, right? Pay 75.
Okay. I'm sorry, I came late. The first case is when one of the shvarim dies.
No. He did damage to the tune of 50. 200 damage to 200, and he did damage to the tune of 50, and now it went up in value or went down in value subsequently. No, right, different cases. This is the case, different case. You're right. Over here, it's he's fulfilling the words of the pasuk. In other words, there's a live animal, a dead animal. The animal's the nizik. So what's the dead animal worth? So Rav Meir says the pasuk speaking of very simple. 200 damage to 200, he owes him 200. He owes him half of that. They split it. Rabbi Yehuda says, yeah, but you haven't fulfilled Gam HaMeis Yechatzum. How do you fulfill those words? So he says, that's speaking about where 200 damage to 200, and the Nevela, the dead animal, the HaMeis, that's the dead animal, the carcass, is worth 50. So the damage was 150, and the mazik should have to pay 75. How do you get to the 75? So he says that's the pasuk. The pasuk says you split the live animal. Listen carefully. This live animal, how much is the live animal worth? 200. Wasn't hurt at all, right? So you split that. Each guy gets 100. Then you split the dead animal. The dead animal's worth 50, right? Each guy gets 25. How much does each guy wind up with? 100 and a quarter, right? 100 and a quarter. That's right, because originally they started off with each one had a $200 animal, and he damaged the other one to the tune of 150. He has to pay 75. So now he started with 200. Now he's got 125. He's got 75. The Nizik also started originally with an animal with 200. His animal was damaged to the tune of 150, and he winds up with 75 because, right, his damage was 150, right? Damage was 150, and he's going to lose 75 out of that 150. But how does he lose the 75? Because they split the live animal, that's 100 apiece, and they split the dead animal, that's 25 apiece. So they each wind up losing 75. That's the bottom line, each of them 75. That's how Rav Yehuda learns the pasuk. Now the Brisa says exactly like Rav Yehuda. The carcass is worth 50. Because he fit the words of the pasuk. It says, so Rav Yehuda apparently learns the pasuk very simply. You split both of them. That's the case of the pasuk. Now, understand, if we talk about any other combination of values, it's not going to be exactly like that. But when the pasuk says, a short time killed another animal, right? And what do? And we know that short time pays only half, right? But what do? You split the live animal and you split the dead animal. That case only works out in this example, where they each started off being worth 200. It could be 300 or 500, whatever. But they both started out worth the same amount, and the damage was 3/4, right? 150. That was the damage because the dead animal is only worth 50. You split both of them. They each wind up with 1 1/4. They started up with a $200. So each had to lose 75. So again, the price. That's the case that we're talking about in the Torah. Any other case doesn't work out. If you don't have these percentages, then the cases aren't going to work out, as we'll see in a few minutes. Or just like we saw before, in the case where the animal went up in value, went down in value. We're talking about a simple. That's the case for Rav Yehuda. Rav Meir, no, ain't that shor. That's not the case we're speaking. What's the shor that we're talking about in the Torah? Like we saw Rav Meir in the Mishnah. The mazik killed the other animal. They each worth 200. It's not worth anything else. You sell the shorachai. You split that, like Rav Meir said in the Mishnah. So what's that speaking about? What is Begamas HaMeis Yechatzun? The mace had no value. This is what he means to say. He means to say that whatever it's worth, whatever the devaluation of the niziks is because the animal is dead now, in this case, 200, the whole thing was devalued to 0, that you take out of the chai. That half of that you take out of chai. In other words, whatever the damage is, whatever the devaluation is in the dead animal, right, or the dead animal or the wounded animal, whatever it is, you take that out of the chai. That's how Rav Meir learns. So what difference does it really make at the end of the day? It's a question how they're interpreting the words. Says Gemara, in a case where it was worth 50 at the end, not where the animal was worth nothing. Case where it was worth 50. Our Mishnah, the damage was 150, right? So he has to pay half 70. They both wind up with 1 1/4. They both take a loss of 75. What's the difference? Except Rav Yehuda says, oh, what you do is this. You split the live one and you split the dead one. So it's 100 1/4 apiece. That's what you wind up. Rav Meir says, no, you don't split the dead one. You say, what was the devaluation of the dead one or the wounded one or dead one in this case makes no difference. What's the devaluation? 150, right? He had a 200 damage of 200. The dead one's worth 50, so the devaluation is 150. Half of that you take out of the mazik's animal. So in other words, out of the mazik's animal, you got to pay 75. In each case, they wind up with 1 1/4. If you learn the way Rav Yehuda learns, you take the live and you split it. Each one winds up with 100. You take the dead and you split each one's 25. They each wind up with 125. Here also, they each wind up with 125. Why? Because the nizik's animal was worth 200. Now it's worth 50. Right? According to Rav Meir, right now it's worth 50. According to Rav Meir, fine, it's worth 50. You got that, and I'm going to pay you 75. 75, 50 is 125. Either way, you wind up with 125. I may have some shock. My opinion. What's the difference between Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda? Here's the difference. Who owns the carcass? Who owns the carcass? Rav Meir says the nizik owns the carcass. I got nothing to do with the carcass. See, I pay you. I know I owe you 150, half of 150. I'll give you the 75. The carcass is your problem. According to Rav Yehuda, no. You split the carcass, right? The carcass is your problem. If it goes down in value, if the carcass went down in value between the time the animal was killed and the time you sold it, that's the nizik's problem, according to Rav Meir. But so my Rav Meir suffer prastavel the nizik. It's his problem. Rav Yehuda suffer prastavel the mazik havi palga. The mazik also shares in that because Rav Yehuda says you split the live animal, you split the dead animal. Well, if the dead animal got worth less, as they each own like the dead animal, so he takes a part in that. Amalei Abaya, according to that, and came Matzin Rav Yehuda, that according to Rav Yehuda comes out that in this case where the Tom killed another animal, and now the nizik's animal, the carcass is worth less, went down in value, the mazik has to absorb some of that too, because he said he's got to whatever it's worth by the time you sell. If that's the case, Tom Chamer Moed. A Tom is more stringent than a Mued. Why? Because by Mued it says V'amesi Alo. When a mu'ed kills another animal, he pays the full amount, right? And what do you do with the carcass? That's the nizik's problem. The mazik has no business with that at all. So if that's the case, and here, if it's a tam, the mazik does take a loss in the devaluation of the carcass from the time of the damage till the time that it was sold. Tam chamri moed, that the tam is more stringent in this aspect than the mu'ed. Kiretan Rav Yehuda Omer, Rav Yehuda find another place that says tam chayev a mu'ed potter in a case where shmira. Let's say you the owner guarded his animal, and yet the animal did something abnormal. This tam is still chayiv. But when it comes to mu'ed, it says if the animal was a mu'ed, was forewarned, and if the owner didn't watch him and he did damage, he passed the full amount. If the owner watched him a little bit, he's potter. So you see over here also that the tam is chayiv more than the mu'ed. You said lenient shmir for watching it. The pasuk says when it comes to guarding your animal, if you guarded your mu'ed, that's good enough. By tam, we don't have that guarding exemption. Fine, that's a special pasuk. Do you ever find when it comes to payment that the tam is more stringent than the mu'ed? Again, that the mu'ed it doesn't have to partake in the nizik's carcass devaluation at all, and by a tam it does. By time when Rabbi Yehuda, listen to this yachol shor of mana. Now we're going to talk about cases where they're not equal. The shore of the mazik and the nizik's animal are worth different amounts. Shor of mana. Let's say the mazik is worth $100, and the nizik's animal was originally worth only $20. Chameshlam is like $20, right? So you had $100 animal. The damaged an animal was worth $20. Vanavel yafasela, and the navel is worth almost nothing, $4. Zenot the chatzia chay v'chatzia mes. As Rabbi Yehuda going to say the same thing there too, that each one is going to take half the live one and half the dead one. Listen to this case. If the nizik's animal was only worth originally 20, now it's worth 4. It's worth very little. What are you going to say? But the mazik animal was worth 100. Are they going to split that too? Are you going to say that? A mu'ed, if he's a forewarned animal, to be machmer or lahaka. Is it to be more machmer or to be cool? The mu'ed pays mezek shalim, the tam pays chatzi mezek, right? A mu'ed, if he damaged X amount, only pays X. He doesn't pay more. So tam akalo kolshke, and certainly a tam shouldn't pay more. What are you going to say? You understand? You had $100 animal that damaged an animal is worth $20, even if it's worth nothing or it's worth a small amount. You're going to split the live animal, and the owner of the nizik is going to get half of the live animal, $50. His animal's only worth 20 to begin with. Are you going to say that now you split the mazik's animal and he's going to get 50, going to pay more than the damage?
Split it up in the nizik's animal.
No. You split that. Rabbi Yehuda is saying at this point, you split the mazik's and you split the nizik's. That's in a case of, again, when it's 200 and 200, it's nice and simple. But what happens if the mazik mazik's animal worth 200, or in this case 100, and the nizik's animal is only worth 20? Whatever the damage was, even if it was a total loss, even if the 20 were gone, but why should he get half of the mazik's animal? That doesn't make any sense. So how can you say that if we learn the way we've been learning until now, that Daf Yomi between Rav Yehuda and Rav Meir is dealing with the carcass, subsequent the differences that dealing Chas Nevel, if it went down in value, right? It went down in value, you're going to say that in this case it comes out that the mazik that a tam is more chomer than a mu'ed, because a mu'ed doesn't have to deal with the carcass, and the tam does. And that doesn't make any sense because we see that we never more makbid on the tam than on the mu'ed. Mu'ed, from the case of the expensive tam ruining the nizik's very inexpensive animal. So you see, as a kal v'chomer, you can't say that doesn't make sense. You can't say that it always works that way. You can't say that the tam is more chomer than a mu'ed. This kal v'chomer shows you that the tam can never have to pay more than a mu'ed. If a mu'ed only have to pay the full damage, you can't say that the tam should pay more than the full damage just because the tam is worth more than the nizik's animal. Elam Rabbi Yochanan can't say that it's this idea. Because why? Because if you say that it's Chas Nevela, it turns out that the tam is more chomer than a mu'ed. Elam Rabbi Yochanan shvach nevela. If the nevela went up in value, sometimes you can have that. The carcass was originally worth 50, we said, and it went up in value. There was a demand for dog food or whatever. Shvach nevela kibinayu. Marsav the nizikave. Remember, Meir says, I got nothing to do with the nevela. I'm going to pay you half out of my animal. The nevela is your problem. And if it went up in value, you get to keep it. Umar Sav and Rabbi Yehuda says no palga, that they split it. They split the increased value too. You hear what I'm saying? The original damage was 150, right? 200 versus 200. How many was 150? The nevela is worth only 50. Now it went up to 60. It's worth more. So according to Yehuda, what? According to Yehuda, the mazik would take a part in that increase, in that profit. It went up. Originally, I owed 75, right? I owed 75. Now I owe less because now the nizik's animal went up from 50 to 60. So I only owe 70, half of 140, not half of 150. Behind the kasha later, Rabbi Yehuda. That's where Rabbi Yehuda had this kasha. It says Hasha Damar Chas Rachmana Le Mazik. The Hashem had Rachmanas on the mazik. Why? Because as we said, remember the whole chatzi nezik is only a knas anyway, because normally you don't expect your animal to do damage. Oh, this dog never does anything, right? He's quiet. Don't worry, he barks all you want, but he won't do anything, right? Hashem mechas rachmana led the mazik, that Hashem said, rachmanas the shakal b'shvacha, that he gets also part of the increase in value of the carcass. According to Rabbi Yehuda, so yachol. What about shor shavachamei shlam? What happens if you have an animal that was worth 5 shekels? That's it. 5 shekels. 5 slum is really 20 shekels. Shenagach shor shavman is worth 100. So the mazik was worth 20. The nizik's worth 100. And the nevela is worth 50. Right? A 20 shekel animal, $20 animal, let's say, damaged a $100 animal, and now the $100 animal is only worth 50. Zeno techatzi achai v'chatzi ames. So each one's going to take half the live one and half the dead one. Zeno techatzi achai ames. All right. Amr hechem etzinu mazik nisker. Listen to this. The reverse of what we said before. The mazik animal was worth 20, and he damaged an animal's worth. He killed an animal's worth 100. Now the $100 animal's worth only 50. Right. So what are you going to say? Each one takes half and half. The mazik animal was only worth 20 to begin with. Now he's going to get half of the dead one too. He's going to make a profit over here. Right. He killed the other animal, and he's going to get half of that. He's going to get a profit. Does that make sense? In other words, Rabbi Yochanan said that the over here the mazik gets half of the nevela of the nizik, of the increase. So over here, how could you say that he's going to get half? You don't have to find that the mazik can do damage and profit by it. Again, a $20 animal killed a $100 animal, and the animal's worth only 50, and the dead animal's worth 50. Are you going to say there too that each gets 50? They each get 50% of both animals. Comes out that the mazik gains. He started off with 20 shekel animal. Now he has half of the 20, which is 10, and half of the 50, which is 25. He has 35. He did damage to the tune of 50, right? He did damage to the tune of how much? Of 50. He should pay 25, and now he's gaining he's going to get 35 here. He's going to gain. But Omer, that pasuk says also shalim mishalim. Why did it say shalim mishalim? Rashi explains both on a tam and a mu'ed. Shalim balam, the balam pays. Balam mishalim and mishalim milton. He pays. He doesn't get. Over here, what you're saying is he gains by it. He's going to gain money, right? He did damage and he's going to make money. He's going to make a profit. Why do you need the second pasuk? Maybe you say there where there's a loss to the nizik, so we don't want to say, look, does it make sense that the mazik should make money, should profit by it if there was a loss to nizik? Let's say the nizik has no loss at all. How? Let's say an animal, the mazik was worth 5, silver, which is 20 shekels. Also damaged another animal was worth 20. They were each worth 20. For some reason, meat is expensive that day. In other words, a 20 shekel animal killed another 20 shekel animal, but the nevel of the carcass is worth 30. Has the nizik suffered a loss? No, he gained. He gained by the damage. So over there, you might say, shekel nami mazik v'shracha. Should he also gain that? Should he also take half of the increase? It's worth more now. In this case, the nizik hasn't lost anything, right? Because his animal's worth 20, now it's worth dead. It's worth more than alive, right? Wanted dead or alive. Here it's worth dead more than alive. So the nizik hasn't lost anything. Maybe the other mazik should get half, should profit and also take half of that and gain. No, the Baal never takes anything. So this is also based on that idea that you can't say that the mazik should profit by it. That doesn't make any sense because Shalom can't profit by it. Also, we say that he can't pay more than Nezek Shalom, right? Because if a Mu'id pays Nezek Shalom, pays the full amount, you can't say that the mazik should. So in the weird cases where the mazik's worth a lot more, or the mazik's worth a lot less, you can't have that based on the psukim. It doesn't make sense. Either a kal v'chomer, the mazik shouldn't have to pay, a tam shouldn't have to pay more than a mu'ed. So if the splitting it up makes the payment more than the full damages, that doesn't make any sense. A kal v'chomer, tam cannot pay more than a mu'ed. And on the other hand, if the other way it works on, that also the tam cannot gain by it, right? He can't gain by it. He has to pay. He doesn't receive anything. Fine. So that makes sense. But im came, you're right. You can't say that the tam should pay more than Nezek Shalom because that's a kal v'chomer. And you can't say that the tam should pay, should receive money. I smashed your car, give me some money. Doesn't make any sense. You can't say that. Shalom yishalom. He pays, he doesn't take. But there could be cases though where he doesn't pay more than Nezek Shalom and he doesn't receive anything, but he pays more than half. How so? How? We're going to explain the case of it in Rashi. The Torah said, you split it, right? How do you because it's possible 50%, no more. So Rashi gives the example. Let's say an animal that was worth 50, listen to this, damaged a shore that was worth 40, okay? And the nevel is worth 20. Upalga, so how much is half the nezek? 10, right? Took 40 down to 10. Right. Now, when you split both of them, according to Rav Yehuda, you split the live one, you split the dead one. Well, the live one was worth 50, so you split that, 25 apiece. You split the dead one, right? You split the dead one. They each get how much? The dead one's worth 20. Each get 10. So it comes out that's 35. The nizik noto nizik machai chafei over meisyud. Comes out that he pays more than half the nezek. Why? Because the mazik's animal is worth 50. You split that, so the nizik gets 25 out of that, right? And they each get 10 out of the carcass. That's 35, right? They each get 10, 35. How much does the nizik get over here? 35, right? They each get 35. But how much was the damage? The damage was 20, right? Damage was 20. So over here, he's paying more than Chatzi Nezek. Nimsa Mazik Misham Yosef Chatzi Nezek. According to Rav Meir, Rav Meir says, no. You pay half of the damage. The damage was 20, right? Damage was 20. You pay half of that. You pay 10, right? The damage was worth 40 originally. Now it's worth 20. You pay 10. Fine. That's what it's worth. There we say if half of the chai is worth more than Nezek Shalom, we had a Kal V'chomer, you can't pay more than a mu'id would pay. But over here, he pays less than him. In other words, the whole Nezek was how much? The whole Nezek was 20, right? The whole Nezek was 20, but it's more than half, right? But he's paying more. He's paying more than the whole damage was 20, but he's still paying more than half because he's losing 25, and so he's losing more than half, even though he's losing more than half the Nezek. So what are you going to say over there? How does that work? If you in space, you split the live one, you split the dead one. Here the Nezek is more than half. So it says the Gemara, back in the Gemara, Islay Rabbi Yehuda also is Misa Machsen B'chai. He also holds like Rav Meir, that whatever the loss was, you take that out of the live animal. You don't split the live one, split the dead one. Manali, how does he know that? Because from a Gama Sameis Yachatzum, but after Rabbi Yehuda already used that for Chatzi Chai. So how could you say that he gets half of the increase here? Yes, Imkain Nichtav Krav Esameis. Could just say Esameis just to teach me that you split half the live and half the dead, half the live and dead. That's from Mace. My Begam Sameis Yachtun Shema Min Achar Tarti. You see that Sameis Yachtun teaches me also. Begam Sameis Yachtun teaches me that he gets half of the increase. So that's what we said before. The machlok between Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda is, what happens if the carcass increased in value a little bit? Does the mazik get part of that? Yes. In other words, in the case we had 200 damage to 200, and now it's worth 50. So the damage was 150, and now the damage is only 140 because it went up a little bit. The mazik gets the advantage of that. Why? Because that's the idea of Gama Ameis Yechtzun. Two things are learned out. Gama Ameis Yechtzun, we say, it teaches me that he gets part of that. Mechtzun, he gets part of that increase. But since it's V'gama Sameis Yechtzun, teaches me both things, that both the loss is paid from the mazik, whatever the depreciation was, the loss was, the damage was, that's paid out of the mazik, mazik's animal. But also, if there's an increase in the nizik, the mazik gets that too. The last Rashi before the Mishnah says, the lepchas shepirsa misa lechud also. It was only telling me that the pchas that's what that he pays that lichtvas ameis yechatzun. My v'gam shma min otarti the shat berachmana b'shvacha, that he also gets part of the shvacha, and that's really the only nafkamina at the end of the day between Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Meir. If there's an increase in the carcass, does the mazik get that advantage also? According to Rav Meir, he wouldn't. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he would. Right, but as far as the other cases work out, it depends on the finances and what they're each worth. Says the Mishnah, Yesh chayav al ma'aseh shor u'poter al ma'aseh atzmo. Sometimes you're chayav for what your shor did, but you're poter if you did the same thing. Sometimes poter al ma'aseh shor. Sometimes you're poter what your shor chayav al ma'aseh atzmo. What do we think about kesa? Shor, but let's say your animal embarrassed somebody, right? You pay nezek rikushevs and boshes. A shor doesn't pay for that. If you purposely embarrass somebody by damaging them and you meant to embarrass them, you have to pay. A shor doesn't. You don't pay if your shor did that. Shor shasima sein avdo v'hibla sheino potter. If your shor knocked out your eved's eye or tooth, you don't have to. Your eved doesn't go out free. But if you knocked out the eye of your eved or the tooth of your eved, it goes out free. You're chayiv. So there's a difference if you sometimes if your shor did something, you're potter. If you did something, you're chayiv. Right? What about the reverse? If your shor physically hurt, damaged your father or mother, you have to pay for that. You've damaged a human being. But if you did damage to your father, mother, you're potter from paying. Why? Because you're chayiv misa. As we'll see, even if you did it for shogi, you're not actually chayiv misa. You still say come rabinate. Let's say your shor burnt down somebody else's stack to the Shabbos. Through this, you're chayiv either way, Shabbos or not Shabbos, you have to pay. But let's say you lit somebody else's, you burnt down somebody's stack on Shabbos, you're potter because you're chayiv for burning on Shabbos, for lighting a fire on Shabbos. So these guys, Tan Ravu Kamed Rav Yochanan, Kolama Kalkulim Peturim. On Shabbos, you're chayiv only when you accomplish something. The 39 melachas, you did some melacha that accomplished something. Let's say you did damage. You're potter. It's potter of a you can't do it l'chachila. You're potter. Chutz michovel, except for damaging a person, because Rashi brings down since we're mater mila on Shabbos, that shows you that any other damage you did on Shabbos to a person, even though it's destructive, you still have to pay. Umaber, if you lit a fire on Shabbos, also you have to you're high for that too, even though it's destructive. Amalei Buktan Lebra. So Rabbi Yochanan should go teach that teaching outside, not in the base medrash. That's wrong. Chovel Amaver ain't a mishnah. We never learned Chovel Amaver. You're chayiv. All destruction is potter. Imtim Shlomer Mishnah. If you say that it is learned, I'll tell you why. It's not where it's destructive. It's Chovel B'Sarach like Halbo. That's where you, let's say, did damage to somebody and you drew blood. You need the blood for your dog, for dog food. Then it's not totally destructive. It's also constructive. Mavir B'Sarach Lefar. Let's say you burnt something because you need the ashes. So again, it's not destructive. There's some action. There's some construction there also. So the Gemara now is going to ask from our Mishnah. What about our Mishnah? Our Mishnah is Tan Shor Shelik Zagosh B'Shabbos Chayv Hu Shelik Zagosh Potter. Tani Hu Dumir Shoro. Presume Mashor look boy. The shore didn't need the fire, so it's destructive in nature. Afhunami Deloka boy. And also it's also destructive with Tani Potter. You're Potter for burning it down on Shabbos. Make sure not Nafsho. So you see you're chayiv for that. You're chayiv on Shabbos. You're chayiv Misa or Shogeg chayiv Achatos, whatever you're chayiv. Because with Tani Potter, you're Potter from paying for it because you're Chayiv Misa. So you see you're Chayiv even on Mekalkal, even on Kalkal or Maver on Shabbos for doing something destructive. The Gemara says, Lo, Shora Dumi Didei. Shora's like him. Mahu the Kaboyle, you needed it for something. Afshora also the Kaboyle. So the Gemara is going to ask, we'll pick up the Mir tomorrow. When does a shore need the ashes? Why would a shore need the ashes? He's using it to rub himself if he's itching or something. He wanted some hot coals. The shore, we're talking about a very smart shore who knows how to make a fire in order to get the hot ashes. But the idea is it's speaking about where you needed it. Where you needed it, that's different. He's going to stay his ground and say that no, that if it's totally makalko, Rabbi Yochanan says is potter. It's only chayev if it had some positive constructive aspect to it. All right, we'll pick up here tomorrow, Mr. Shem. Have a good day.